Christ. That this is not about just marriage. Marriage is a perfect example of God and us. God and us. We're going to talk about that when we start studying Ruth. It's a perfect example of God bringing us in, of God showing his love for us, and we, in turn, showing our love, our response. Ruth's response was a wondrous response of love and care. The next thing I would point out is that we remind ourselves that none of us are any good. And God tells us clearly in Proverbs 15:28 and 29, that the heart of the righteous studieth to answer, but the mouth of the wicked poureth out evil things, and the Lord is far from the wicked, but he heareth the prayer of the righteous. So there are two types. There is that which is not in Christ and that which is. That who are not following after God and godly things, and that which do. Those who lay up their treasures in heaven, and those who are encompassed by the things of the world. And their hearts are filled with that which is going to die, which is going to perish, which is going to fade away. When he goes to do, when we talk about the wicked, they continuously do not have God's ear. They want to just turn away. He tells us that the next thing he tells us is not to stand, right? We are not to stand. We're not to abide in. We're not to confirm, to endure, to establish that which the sinners do. See, when we do that, and he talks about the way. We do not stand in the way of sinners. He says that this is a course of life. This is a walk. We are now walking in this place. We are now acting out in the same way as the world. What were some of the problems of the church of Pergamos and others? They allowed the world in, and so they poured out the world with whatever else God had given. That's the mistake we have always, because we want to balance. There is no balance. Pablo's correct. You are either with him or you're against him. You can love the sinner but hate the sin. It's not about, because guess what? We're all sinners. We all lost. We all have failed. He says, there is no one that is good. No, not one. That's the emphasis. That's the exclamation point. No, not one. It takes a lot. It takes us not allowing ourselves to walk that path of sin, to act it out, to live it in our own lives. And then he says, the seat. In Moshub. And it's the inhabited place, the being in a part of the assembly, dwelling with the scornful. Who are the scornful? They're the mockers. They're the ones who create dissension. They are the ones who create havoc, chaos. I've seen churches that have those who bring in chaos and dissension into the church. Hard thing when it comes into the very house of the children of God. So it's not just being outside. It's not just those who are outside. And this is why it's brought to me. Because the question I always ask myself, am I fully living you? Am I acting according to your plan for me? Or am I just acting? Am I just putting on a picture of someone who is holy? Am I just sharing an idea that I'm good when I'm not? He says I'll look like a sepulcher, a whitewashed tomb, but inside nothing but dead man's bones. That's a painful thought, that my Lord would have to see me in that manner. That's the beginning of that place of looking at this. It is not just about who we walk with, who we follow after, what we do outside. It's about who we are inside. God always starts off with the heart. It's always from the inside out. It's always about how he wants us to live. He says their mouths, their tongues, everything is, they draw near to me. They act like they're with me. They want to be, but their hearts are so far from me. And that's something we have to keep in mind. Paul thought he was doing God's will. How many others thought? What was the biggest thing that was wrong with the Jews during the time of Judges? Joshua finishes off his part of judgment. He was a judge. His judgment ended with him saying that you follow what you will. You can follow the gods of this land. You can do what you want. But as for me and my family, we will follow the Lord. That example stood so strong that the people that were there that day said, and we shall follow the Lord and no other. And they did for a while. But over time, Joshua was gone. They started doing what was right in their own eyes. Do we do what is right in our own eyes? Do we forget that what is right in our own eyes doesn't mean it's right in God's eyes? Do we really consider that? That is the big thing that we need to ask ourselves every day. I got this little doohickey here given to me by Pablo, and it's about the armor of God. It tells you to wear the armor of God. It reminds you, you must wear the armor of God. In wearing the armor of God, you're reminded every day that you are in a battle, and that battle requires you to live and act and walk in accordance to the purpose of God for your life. Not for Joe Blow's life on the street down the corner, not for somebody else in church who may not be acting in accordance to the way they should at all times. It's not your purpose. Your purpose is to come and bring them back to Him, to share His love. What are we? We're supposed to eat the manna every day and be springs of living water pouring forth God's chesed, His love, His mercy, His kindness. That's the word chesed. It has so many meanings. It's like shalom. It has so many meanings that it encompasses so many different ways of saying it, that God says it and uses the same word for different words in the Old Testament. His chesed was so important. And then He brings us to a place where He now starts talking about what we should be doing. So when He starts off with what we shouldn't be doing, because our lives need to be set on Him. Our eyes need to be looking to Him. Our hearts need to be given over to Him. And it's not always clear for us if we're not in the place where we need to be. And He says, but His delight is in the law of the Lord, and in His law doth He meditate day and night. In His law doth He meditate day and night. The word meditate is to chagah. It's the roar of a lion eating his prey. It's to chew on the Word, to dig into the Word, to fill yourself with the Word. In the Beatitudes, He says, blessed is the man that hungers and thirsts after righteousness, for he shall be filled. That hunger and thirst is a desire to be conformed to the image of our Lord and King and love. That is what we look for. That is what we want. We hunger and thirst after that. We desire that more than anything else, that this world has nothing to offer us. But He is the culmination of every part of the work that God started in us. And He says that He will complete the work that He began in us. There's no doubt about it. When God says it, it will be done. It is his joy to see us grow in his Son, live in his Son, be in his Son, walk as his Son. When people see us, do they see Jesus? When I used to look at Joy when she walked in and out of here, smile in spite of the trials, in spite of the pain, in spite of the suffering, watching her son who saw this every day, knowing how much that must hurt, and yet she smiled. That was Christ. That was a picture of Jesus. He was there every step of the way. Doesn't always go the way we would like. But it is appointed for every man and woman to die until the time that he comes and pulls us out of here. It is a gift. She was a gift. Because it showed us what it meant to live Christ in spite of. In spite of what's happening. Paul says that even in much or in little, he doesn't care. He's going to always be all right. He's got it. The guy who has him in his hand is better and greater than anything in this world. Yes, we are in this world, but we're not of this world. When we're of this world, we forget ourselves. When we're of this world, we do what we think is right in our own eyes. When we're of this world, we start looking to the things of this world to protect us, to keep us, to watch over us. Nothing can watch over us. I learned that. I came to a conclusion. I can't protect Pau the way God can protect Pau. She's the love of my life. But I can't protect her the way God can. There's just no way. So who should I depend on? Me? Or should I depend on him? Him. He is the way, the truth, and the life. There is nothing that brings us to the Father except him. And that is the joy that we have, that we know him, that he's in our hearts, that he matters to us more than anything. This is the gift that we're given. And then he goes on and he starts talking about fruit. And he says that as we meditate day and night, not just once in a while, day and night, that we shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bringeth forth his fruit in his season, and his leaf shall not wither, but whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. And you know, when you first look at that, and many people look at it, they're seeing, well, I'll be able to, if I have land and I'm growing crops, they'll come up. If I'm working jobs, I'll make money. No, it is God's purpose that is the fruit that you bring. You're living water. You're a fountain of living water. His love, his chesed, his kindness, his mercy flows from you to others. And as you do that, you share his word, his gift of what he did with the Samaritan woman. How did he handle the Samaritan woman? First, he developed a relationship. He asked her for water. And then, as he asked her for water, he said, you know, you need the water I can give you. That's living water. You'll never thirst again after that. You will never thirst if you... So now he's telling her what she really needs is God. And then she goes, how can you provide water when you don't even have a bucket? The water that he has was so much greater. The gift that he was ready to give her was so much more. But now, why don't you bring your husband? And she says, I have no husband. He says, you're right, you do not have a husband. But you've been married all these many times, and you've had all these, and now you're the man you're living with, you're not married to. He confronted her with her sin. So now she has to look at her sin and understand that she needs something. And she realized that immediately by saying, where do we worship? Do we worship in Jerusalem, where they say we should be worshiping, or here, where we say you should be worshiping? And he said, no. At one point, there's going to be a time when you're going to worship in spirit and in truth. It's in the knowledge. Yes, you have the Jews have the knowledge, but they don't have the Spirit. You have the desire, but no knowledge. You need to know him. You need to understand who he is. That's why you meditate on his word, on his law, day and night. Because you get to know him. You get to put your full trust in him. You have a relationship with him. And that relationship develops over time. It's like a marriage. It's like a courting. You start off getting to know each other. And then you grow. Yes, Bob.
Can you share what you were talking about Haggai and meditate, chewing the
I think we did right at the very beginning, but yeah, it's Haggadah is to chew and to dig into the word. So when we see something like this, many people just read the top. But there's layers and layers underneath. It's like an onion. Oh, and those onions were so good. And yes.
And I think a very key word in verse 3 is that it will bring forth fruit in its
Season.